here to make his weekly appearance and talk about the latest Bills victory is the man, the myth, the legend from NFL Network and resident member of Bills Mafia, one Michael Robinson. Real Mike Rob, welcome.
What's up, guys? What's up? Happy Victory Monday to you guys as well. And guys, we ran the football. Oh, the running back in me is very excited. Absolutely.
Yeah, that did seem to be. We knew the Browns were struggling against the run, but we didn't know if we had the juice to take advantage of it, and certainly we did. Both James Cook, Devin Singletary, both getting 86 yards on the ground. Josh Allen's number wasn't called. He wasn't even a factor, really, in that run game. Not very many quarterback-called runs. It was just old-fashioned. They went up in between the tackles a lot of the times.
Yep.
So I guess maybe it's on the menu now that the Bills can take advantage of it if you don't bring the stuff in the run defense.
Absolutely. And I thought, especially, Roger Saffold and Deion Dawkins, those guys on that left side, those double teams, man, were critical. They got to the second level and they gave, Devin White and James Cook some space to operate. I thought James Cook also does well taking the football on the outside. Again, just his linear shape and his body doesn't have many hips, so tacklers seem to just kind of slug off of him. But I think just seeing the fact that this team ran the ball for 171 yards. They moved the line of scrimmage, and they stopped the Cleveland Browns, who I thought were one of the top running teams in the National Football League. They stopped that rushing attack. So, again, controlling the line of scrimmage is something that I know is important to Sean McDermott, and they did a great job of this yesterday.
Yeah, I was talking to James Cook in the locker room after the game, and he's kind of a quiet-as-kept guy. And I kind of looked at him, and I said, "You almost had that one." And he's like, "Man, that should have gone for 73. He was a shoestring tackle away from, a 70-plus yard touchdown. It ends up only going for 29. But that ends up being the longest play from scrimmage for the Bills in the entire football game. He got the most carries he's had. He tied for the most carries he's had all season, except this time, instead of garbage time against Pittsburgh going for 53 yards, he goes for 86 on 11 carries. I've been kind of pounding the table a while for this, but he's got to be in the game that much, if not more, going forward.
Yeah, and I think the early part of the season was just the team kind of figuring out the exact role for him. But it's just that, we don't run the ball as much, so the opportunities just aren't going to be there. And I've said it before on this show, Devin Singletary, in my opinion, is the glue to this offense. He just does so much, whether it's the dirty 3 yards to get a first down or just the check down pass that he ends up getting 12 yards and getting the first down and bailing the offense out. So both of these running backs are very critical to the success of this offense, and they're going to have to find a defined role for both of these guys. But again, just to see the line of scrimmage move, to me, that was something that was huge for our Bills offense. And then when you look at Josh Allen's final numbers, 18 for 27, 197 yards and just a touchdown, I looked at that as a very successful day because it meant that he checked the football down. It meant he didn't try to force the ball in the windows. And I know people saw Stephon, kind of having some issues and, Sean McDermott having to talk to him, kind of calming him down a little bit. To me, that was indicative of Josh Allen just taking whatever the defense gives you. And if they can do that, I think, again, this team will be in a better situation at the end of games to close games out.
You mentioned it, and when we brought up the running game, about the ability to run to the edges and James Cook's ability to get around the corner. Devin Singletary did a little bit of that, but James Cook with his explosion, it seemed to work better yesterday. Why yesterday when not only did they run to the edge with James Cook, as we saw in a couple of those highlights, but also they ran up inside with a pin and pull and the trap blocks.
Yes.
They did a lot of, stuff in the offensive line that gave them some seams up inside. Why yesterday? And I know some of it had to do with the Browns, but, what they do yesterday differently offensively?
Well, again, when you look at the Cleveland Browns, and I'll just talk about them for a second, to me, the reason why they were able to run the ball so effectively, first of all, a lot of their defensive linemen, they like to rush the passer. They don't want to play the run. You know what I'm saying? Myles Garrett, he's a threat every single time he's on the football field, but a lot of those other defensive linemen, they don't want to play the run and get dirty like that. And then when I look at their linebackers, right, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, he's a smaller guy. You know what I'm saying? Taki, he's a smaller guy. You know what I'm saying? And so the ability for our offensive linemen to get up on those guys, to me, that was the difference in the run game. That was why the offensive line, that was why the line of scrimmage was moving so much yesterday.
Yeah, and there's no reason to think it wouldn't continue this coming week against Detroit, a team that can't stop anybody, run or pass. They're 31st in the league against the run, and people just seem to run over them. So more of that, please. What do you think of this theory, Mike? Obviously, the Bills are coming off a very trying week. Wednesday, they can't even have team segments of practice because 5 guys are out sick. They got another half dozen out with injury. They only do an individual position drills on Wednesday. They get a regular practice in Thursday, but then practice is canceled on Friday. I think that kind of explains the slow start, number one. But number two, from a psychological standpoint, Josh Allen was supremely frustrated with himself after these last 2 games. And the Bills came out on Sunday and won in a much different fashion than they had been previously. How much does that help Josh Allen's mental psyche in believing, hey, you know what? It's not all on me every week to do everything for us to win a football game. How far does that go for Josh Allen's mental psyche the way they won yesterday?
It goes 10, 20, 30 miles, man. It goes a long way. I mean, if I was Ken Dorsey after this game, the first thing I would have said to Josh Allen is, see, you don't have to do it yourself. See, we got guys. And to me, that's why the Buffalo Bills are the front runner. When a defense can present something to you, or a team can present something to you, and you can play any game that team presents, if it's a throwing game where, it's a bunch of different coverages that have to be used, we have the depth, we have the players, we have the pass rush to be able to defend against that. If it's a team that wants to run the football, you got Big Ed Oliver and those guys splitting double teams yesterday. I mean, Ed Oliver was pumped up, and I know he was pumped up because the first play of the game, he kind of got slung down, you know what I'm saying? And then after that, he started wearing the interior of the Cleveland Browns out, right? You know what I'm saying? So you can play any game that an offense presents, and then offensively, Josh can throw it, as we've seen him throw this team to wins. And then to me yesterday, it was the offensive line, it was the running backs, it was the line of scrimmage and the stopping the other team from running the football that won the football game for you. So if I'm Josh Allen, absolutely, I'm sitting back saying, okay, maybe I don't have to always be in a Superman type of a role and try to always put so much on myself. Sometimes maybe we can play the field position game, and at the end of the game, we'll figure out a way where I can use my special powers to be special.
Did you ever get a chance to play on Thanksgiving? I know every team now plays on Thursday at some point, but Thanksgiving at 12:30, it's pretty quick.
That's tough. I ain't gonna even lie to you, man. I don't even know how the game plan can't change but so much, because again, I mean, you guys had to travel back from Detroit. You're dealing with family coming in. It's just a lot going on, and you got to travel back. So it's a lot. It's going to come up on you quick. But at the end of the day, this is where Brandon Beam comes in, right? The roster is that good. The depth is that good. The chemistry, the fact that these guys have played together has been that good. And so to me, that is what needs to kick in, and that'll get us a W.
You touched on it, Mike, the defensive front. Ed Oliver, as you said, was a beast. 3 tackles for loss on Nick Chubb alone. Matt Milano had 2, including the big one on the direct snap in the red zone, drops him for a 6-yard loss. The Browns end up settling for a field goal there. Jordan Phillips, Tim Settle, all these guys were getting involved in, the focal point was Nick Chubb, and they shut him down. 19 yards on 14 carries. It's his lowest rushing total in his career in any game in which he has had 10 carries or more. What impressed you most about that defensive front in neutralizing Chubb?
The ability of Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, and in company, Tim Settle, all of those guys, to split double teams right, when the ball is coming directly at them, and then that outside zone to kind of use the offensive lineman to shut off the gap in front of them and still have the wherewithal and playmaking ability to be able to make the tackle. If you guys understand what I'm saying, like a lot of defensive linemen, they can beat up an offensive lineman, but they don't always still make the tackle. Or they can jack up an offensive lineman or make it, hold up multiple offensive linemen to allow the linebackers to go run and hit, but they don't make the tackle. I mean, Ed Oliver, Tim Settle, those guys, man. I mean, these are playmakers at the point of attack, playmakers at the line of scrimmage. And when you have guys like that, man, it makes running the football very tough. You talk about Nick Chubb, 14 carries, 19 yards. Hell, his longest carry was 12 yards. I mean, so the rest of his carries didn't net much. So at the end of the day, this defense, and especially that defensive line, they showed up.
I was talking to Jordan Phillips in the locker room after the game, and he says, you all need to start talking about Matt Milano as a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He said the guy shows up every week. He's consistent. He makes big plays. He has the fumble recovery yesterday. As we mentioned, 2 tackles for loss. He should have had an interception too. But all of that being said, what can be said about the week-to-week consistency of Milano, especially in the absence of Tremaine Edmonds yesterday, showing up and playing the game he played?
I mean, he may be the most valuable piece to any defense, specifically to this Buffalo Bills defense. I mean, think about it. When he's not there, whether it's tight ends, backs, or whatever, they find success in the run game. They find success in underneath passes, all of those things. I mean, Leslie Frazier uses his ability in so many different ways. There was this little third down blitz package this past week where they were kind of in an odd front, walked the linebackers up over the guards, and Matt Milano, was on the outside, and the scheme allowed him to be scot-free, right? And he just went in there, did his thing, made the sack, kept and got up, and he just keeps on playing. Right, he's never too excited, never too hype, or never too down about what's happening. He just gets up and he continues to play. I'm not gonna go as far in saying he should be in the Defensive Player of the Year race or anything like that. But at the end of the day, I don't know if there's anybody else that makes more important plays, more impactful plays for their defense than a Matt Milano.
Would you go all pro?
Oh yeah, that's easy. That's easy. I don't know. Is there another linebacker playing better, making bigger plays? I mean, if you count Michael Parsons as a linebacker, okay, yeah, because he rushes the passer. But I'm talking about the little things. I'm talking about alignment. I'm talking about being able to spy a quarterback and talk a quarterback out from rushing. I'm talking about tipping a pass. I mean, all of the little things that sometimes don't always show up in the box score Matt Milano does.
Yeah, one of the things about this defense, last year, it was a defense that was really great statistically, but they didn't have too many splash plays. Even yesterday, neither team had an interception, although they almost got a tipped one. The splash plays are really kind of what defenses look for to get that label of being a dominant defense, one where the offense is just a mess because the defense is just in their grill the entire game. The Bills are more like that this year than they were a year ago. Milano's a big reason why, even with a secondary that is nothing like what we thought it was going to look like.
No, they've been beat up, but I will say Jordan Poyer's return was very much welcomed. I mean, he was on David Njoku on a couple of screens that would have been out the gate if he wasn't there. Long pass down the field that he ended up breaking up, that if he wasn't in the game, those would have been big plays and could have been the difference in the game. I mean, just seeing the communication between him and Hamlin, I mean, they needed his experience. They needed his eyes. They needed, the things that he's seen before in the past. They needed his playmaking ability in the back end. And it just seems like when Jordan Poyer is in the lineup, there's a little bit of there's a calmness in the back end. There isn't any panic. And when both him and Micah Hyde were out the last couple of weeks, to me, there was a little bit of panic in the back end. They seemed to be a little bit more settled down this past week.
The most interesting thing was the way in which Poyer was deployed yesterday, because playing with Damar Hamlin, who's known as a more physical player and does some of his best work up near the line of scrimmage, they had Poyer playing more of the center field role that Micah Hyde used to play. Obviously, Hyde's out for the season with the neck injury. What did you make of that, seeing Poyer out in center field more, kind of viewing everything from that perspective, when in past years when Hyde is in the lineup, he's usually the more physical guy up at the line.
That's the that's the value of Jordan Poyer, right? With all the motion and shifts that these offenses do now with fly motion, jet sweep motion, this and RPO this or whatever, you almost got to be connected in the back end, right? And Jordan Poyer, to me, his experience is the reason why they put him in the back, right? You're dealing with a guy like Amari Cooper who, I mean, he can route anybody up in the National Football League. He understands how to get open. You want experience on the back end, especially with young corners. You want experience on the back end. At the very least, you may give up a big play, but you won't give up a big play for an explosive touchdown because you have a short tackler on the back end. That is the insurance policy that Jordan Poyer added for this defense. That's why I think they put him in the back end.
What do the Bills have to be wary of this week against the Lions? Certainly, the Lions, they've got a 3-game winning streak going. Their defense has struggled, but their offense is throwing some points on the board. What do you think the Bills need to worry about most when they're facing the Detroit Lions this week?
Well, more than anything, just complacency in their heads, right? Just understand what happened, right? You played a tough game against the Minnesota Vikings, tough emotional game that you literally gave them the game, right? Then you had to deal with weather, you had to deal with traveling, all of those things this past week. Now you're dealing with Thanksgiving and everything, and you could kind of relax a little bit in this game. Oh, it's the Detroit Lions. We should just we can show up and just beat them. And I'm not saying that guys will be saying that, but it's a kind of feeling, right? As soon as this game starts, they need to be on the attack mode. They need to be hitting everything defensively and offensively, being explosive and being physical, still being able to run the football, being physical and being explosive that way. And I think they'll be fine. But Jared Goff, I'm on Ross St. Brown. Jamal Williams. All of those guys can play. So if you don't come in with the right mindset, the Detroit Lions will beat you.
Yeah. I want to, before we let you go, tip my hat to Buffalo special teams here, Mike Robb. I know you played some special teams
Absolutely.
in your time. The drive starts that Nyheim Hines was handing the offense, particularly in the first half when their offense wasn't in full gear yet, and Tyler Bass with 6 field goals yesterday. So maybe just talk about the contributions of those two, because at the end of the day, Hines has 113 yards on returns. Those are those hidden yards that coaches talk about.
That is those are those hidden yards. And first of all, Tyler Bass, dude, bro, you got ice water running through your veins, man. I know it's cold up there in Buffalo right now. It's cold here in Virginia too. But you got ice water running through your veins, bro. 6 for 6, that's pretty dope, man. And you hit some long ones and you drilled them, man. Great job, number one. Number two, when I look at Nyheim Hines, man, return guy, he reminds me, not necessarily how he's built or whatever, but just the way he returns. He reminds me of Leon Washington. I used to block for Leon Washington with the Seattle Seahawks, and it's because the first guy never really gets him, right? Whether it's a punt return, kickoff return, he always makes the first guy go, and he goes, right? It's the guys that hesitate is the guys that I didn't like blocking for, right? Because you didn't know where they were going to go. They didn't set up blocks. This guy goes, and that's why those hidden yards you talk about, if they're out there, Nyheim Hines is going to find them. And he's a running back, right? And so he understands how to run through contact. That's why I like running backs being return guys, because at the end of the day, they know how to run with the football. Special teams is awesome. And at the end of the day, the special teams are going to be the reason why we win some games coming down the stretch.
And I'll say this too, guys running backs are more used to breaking tackles too. You're always going to – it's all right for guys, like me and – Isaiah McKenzie, these guys that weigh $175 or $180. When somebody gets a hand on you, you go down, right?
Yep.
You get a 200-pound guy in there, or 195 on a 200-pound, 210-pound guy back there. Makes a big difference when you're trying to run through an arm tackle.
And for the guys covering, you know this. Covering, it makes you think a little bit. Running full speed, you're like, okay, this 220-pound guy coming at me. Okay, let me slow it down a little bit, and it forces you to make a business decision.
Yeah, you really gotta. You really got to get ready to jump under that chariot. I did it. I did it a couple of times. I threw myself under the wheels of the train a couple of times, but
get them down.
Man, somebody else give me some help here, I'm with you.
Yeah. Mike Robb, thanks as always.
Thanks, Mike.
Happy Thanksgiving, and we'll catch up with you next week.
Yes, sir, man. Go Bills. Let's get it.